Most people picture Vietnam as a postcard come to life. A place where vibrant lanterns float down ancient rivers, motorbikes zip through sun-drenched alleys, and every street corner promises a $1 bowl of steaming pho served with a smile. And truthfully, all of that exists. But the moment you step beyond the curated images, when the Instagram filters fade and the tourist goggles come off, you begin to notice something deeper, something quieter, something real. Alex, a 58-year-old expat from Canada, moved to Vietnam chasing a fantasy. He was newly retired, divorced, and burnout from a life that had become more routine than real. He'd seen the YouTube videos, read the expat blogs, and was convinced, this place is paradise. When he arrived in Saigon, the sensory overload thrilled him. He'd walk through Benton Market, trying exotic fruits he couldn't pronounce. He rented a studio apartment with a balcony for less than what he used to pay for parking back home. And the food, oh the food. Breakfast for $1, dinner for $2. For a while, it felt like he had found a secret shortcut to happiness. But as weeks turned into months, the layers began to peel back. The reality most travel brochures won't show you is that life in Vietnam, while mesmerizing, is also full of contradictions. Behind the charming street stalls and cheerful sidewalk cafes lies a rhythm that doesn't always match a foreigner's heartbeat. It's not worse, just different. And in that difference, many expats like Alex find themselves quietly adrift. According to a study published in the International Journal of Intercultural Relations, many long-term expatriates in Southeast Asia experience what researchers call cultural dissonance fatigue. A subtle psychological stress that builds up when your daily reality is constantly out of sync with the cultural norms around you. You're always adapting, adjusting, interpreting. For some, like Alex, the dissonance shows up as a kind of emotional static. Not loud enough to panic you, just enough to wear you down. He remembers one night, sitting in a noisy sidewalk cafe. The food was good, the beer was cheap, the streets alive with music and chatter. But something was missing. He looked around at the locals, laughing in Vietnamese, seamlessly flowing with their surroundings, and he felt like a spectator, not a participant. The warmth was there, but the belonging wasn't. The part no one tells you? That $550 a month can indeed buy you comfort here, but it doesn't automatically buy you connection. This isn't to say the dream is a lie. Not at all. It's simply incomplete. Because living in Vietnam means accepting the messy, beautiful contrast between image and experience. It's a country where you can rent a clean, air-conditioned apartment in the heart of Saigon for $280 a month, with fast Wi-Fi and a view of bustling streets below. It's a place where grocery shopping can feel like a treasure hunt. Dragon fruit, rice noodles, fresh greens, all under $25 a week. It's where every meal is an experience. Banh mi for breakfast, steaming bun cha for lunch, garlic-soaked morning glory with rice for dinner, all hot, fresh, and served with the kind of personal touch that makes even a stranger feel seen. But here's the real catch. Vietnam gives generously to those who give themselves fully. To those who slow down, observe, learn, respect. A 2021 report from the Asia-Pacific Journal of Social Science noted that expats who integrated more deeply with local communities, learning the language, participating in rituals, sharing meals, were not only happier but experienced lower rates of loneliness and anxiety compared to those who remained isolated in expat bubbles. Alex learned this the hard way. In his 4th month, after a small accident left him bruised and homesick, he was helped by his neighbor, a Vietnamese woman in her 60s named Lon. She brought him soup, rubbed tiger balm on his shoulder, and insisted he call her Chi Lon, Sister Lon. From then on, every Saturday, they shared coffee in the courtyard. She didn't speak much English. He didn't speak much Vietnamese. But they laughed. They cared. And slowly, he stopped feeling like a visitor in his own life. Vietnam is not just a place to escape the West. It's a place that asks for your attention, your adaptation, your presence. It's not for those who want only the fantasy. It's for those willing to live in the full, unfiltered version of a place, where joy walks hand in hand with discomfort, and beauty doesn't always arrive in a straight line. And that's where the real story begins. For Alex, the dream of Vietnam had evolved into something more intimate, less postcard, more journal. The streets he once viewed with wide-eyed wonder became familiar, comforting in their unpredictability. But even comfort here isn't static. It shifts with every honking scooter, every spilled bowl of noodles, every XIN chow from a passing stranger. Vietnam doesn't let you stay a tourist for long. The rhythm of life here demands something more active, more attentive. By 6 a.m., the city hums to life. Vendors shout prices in sing-song voices, fruit carts clatter over uneven sidewalks, and the scent of thick, bitter coffee lingers in the humid air like incense in a temple. In a country where daylight shapes daily life, you learn quickly, late-night convenience is replaced by morning connection. There's no 24/7 drive-through comfort here. No midnight snack runs or around-the-clock pharmacies. Instead, life slows after sunset. Neighborhoods grow quieter. Shutters roll down. The world returns to stillness. And that stillness, especially for someone used to Western convenience, can be deeply unsettling at first. But eventually, it becomes a kind of medicine. Because in Vietnam, presence is not optional. It's built into the system. Alex began waking up earlier, not out of discipline, but necessity. The market near his apartment closed by 9 a.m., and if he wanted the freshest greens and just-baked bread, he had to be there before the sun got too high. Over time, he began to crave those quiet walks through the buzzing lanes. The old women selling herbs. The kids running barefoot chasing chickens. The neighbor who always waved from her balcony with a toothbrush still in her mouth. These small, unspectacular moments grounded him in a way that conference calls and corporate meetings never had. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who coined the term flow state, once said that humans feel happiest when they are fully absorbed in the moment, when action and awareness merge. Vietnam, in its own way, creates the conditions for this flow. You're not numbed by excess here. You're sharpened by simplicity. Every street crossing, every meal, every interaction pulls you into the now. And food in Vietnam is not a solitary affair. It's a cultural glue. Forget private dining rooms or quiet dinners with your phone. Here, meals happen on the curb, beneath flickering fluorescent lights, where strangers sit shoulder to shoulder on plastic stools the size of milk crates. 3 generations might share a meal at the same table, grandmother slurping noodles, mother feeding rice to a toddler, father telling jokes no one else laughs at but everyone enjoys. One rainy evening, Alex found himself trapped beneath a tarpaulin awning with a dozen strangers during a sudden monsoon. They were all eating bun ryu, crab noodle soup, rich and steaming, served in mismatched bowls. The woman next to him leaned over, pointed at his bowl, and said something in Vietnamese he didn't understand. Then she smiled, tore off part of her baguette, and handed it to him without hesitation. It was in that soaked, crowded corner of the city that Alex felt something shift inside. He wasn't a guest anymore. He wasn't a tourist. He was a man sharing bread in the rain with people who expected nothing, gave everything, and didn't care that he didn't speak their language. There's science to back this kind of connection. Studies in the Journal of Cross-Cultural Psychology show that cultures with communal dining habits report higher levels of interpersonal trust and well-being than those with individualistic meal practices. Eating together, especially in unstructured, informal settings, triggers oxytocin release, the so-called bonding hormone. In other words, it's not just the soup that warms you. It's the people around it. And that's where Vietnam begins to change you, not just in how you live, but how you relate. In the West, connections often require context. You meet through work, through friends, through apps. There are categories, boundaries, and expectations. But in Vietnam, relationships grow in the cracks while waiting for coffee, sitting at the barbershop, bumping into the same lady every Tuesday at the wet market. There's a social elasticity here that's hard to define but easy to feel. Alex once took his motorbike in for repairs at a tiny garage squeezed between 2 homes. The mechanic, a wiry man in his 40s with a bright laugh, told him to wait, then handed him a beer. 20 minutes later, he was sitting on a plastic stool with 4 strangers watching football on a tiny TV, cheering for a team he didn't even know. He never got a receipt for the motorbike repair. But he got invited to dinner the next night. That's Vietnam. It doesn't knock. It just opens the door and sees if you'll step in. But not everything is easy. And not every smile means understanding. There were days Alex felt like he was walking through a world built on rules no one had explained. The sudden mood shifts. The unspoken codes. The indirect communication style. Misunderstandings were frequent. Apologies hard to interpret. He learned that saving face is more important than winning an argument. That a yes sometimes means maybe and no is wrapped in a silence that you're expected to interpret with sensitivity. These are the moments when expats struggle the most, not because the culture is unfriendly, but because it's unfamiliar. And unfamiliarity, left unchecked, can fester into frustration or even resentment. But Alex had learned something by now. You don't overcome culture. You surrender to it. Asterisk, asterisk. You don't demand understanding. You offer curiosity. And when you do, Vietnam gives back, not in grand gestures, but in hundreds of small, almost invisible acts that quietly stitch you into its fabric. By his 8th month, Alex no longer asked asterisk, how long can I stay here? Asterisk, but asterisk, how deeply can I live here? Asterisk. And in that shift from transaction to transformation, he began to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Home. But even as Alex found rhythm, even as the chaos became comfort, something else began to rise, something quieter. Loneliness. Not the loud, dramatic loneliness that demands tears or dramatic exits. The other kind. The kind that arrives in small moments, when a joke doesn't translate, when a festival happens and you're not quite sure what it's for, when a whole room laughs and you smile politely, 2 seconds too late. It's the loneliness of knowing you're visible, but not fully seen. Alex kept showing up at the same coffee stall each morning. The woman there remembered his order. Safi Sua, extra strong. She smiled, asked about his day. But after the 4th week, he realized this was the longest conversation he had every day. 60 seconds. Maybe 90. Then she turned to the next customer, and he sat there, alone with his coffee and the motorbike horns. This is the part of the expat life no one writes about. You scroll Instagram and see sunsets, smoothies, and street food. But off-screen, there are people like Alex, sitting in tiny apartments, clinging to rituals that give shape to a shapeless life. Same coffee shop. Same lunch stall. Same walk past the temple. Not out of joy, but out of need. Because when everything is foreign, repetition becomes your only anchor. A 2019 study in global health research and policy found that expats living in culturally dissimilar countries often experience what psychologists call rootlessness fatigue, an emotional exhaustion triggered by lack of belonging, family structure, and emotional continuity. The initial excitement fades, and without intentional social grounding, many begin to feel adrift. That's why some expats seek connection in places not listed on maps. Alex started hearing whispers of places in District 1. Neon-lit foot massage parlors that offered more than relaxation. He'd walk by at night and notice how people came out looking different, not just physically relaxed, but emotionally soothed, in a way that wasn't entirely wholesome or entirely wrong. These places don't advertise. They don't need to. Everyone who needs them knows where to go. And no, this isn't about judgment. It's about reality. Every country has its shadows. Vietnam's are wrapped in silk curtains and soft lighting, hidden behind polite smiles and coded phrases. Some foreigners fall in love there. Some fall apart. Some confuse connection with comfort and end up more lost than they were before. But still, beneath the messiness, the contradictions, the aching in between, there's beauty. Deep beauty. Because Vietnam is honest in its unpredictability. It doesn't pretend to be polished or perfect. It doesn't bend itself to fit your expectations. It simply exists in full color, asking only one thing, that you show up for it fully. And Alex did. He stopped chasing the version of Vietnam he'd seen online. He started showing up where life was happening, messy, loud, inconvenient, and astonishing. He joined Tai Chi groups in the park. Got invited to a wedding where he didn't understand a single word, but danced for hours. He went fishing with a neighbor who communicated entirely through gestures and gut laughter. He learned to speak less and listen more, to stop fixing and start feeling. And slowly, that rootless ache softened. Because belonging, it turned out, wasn't about being understood perfectly. It was about being present honestly. Even the frustrations became part of the charm. The power cuts that ruined Zoom meetings. The karaoke at midnight. The sidewalk repairs that took 3 days longer than promised. You begin to laugh, not because it's funny, but because resistance is pointless, and because something about surrender feels strangely like freedom. One night, during the rainy season, Alex stood under a cracked awning watching the streets flood with motorbikes and headlights slicing through water. A boy waded past barefoot, holding his sandals above his head, grinning. A woman tossed him a plastic poncho from her balcony. No one yelled. No one panicked. Life flowed imperfect, unstoppable. And in that moment, Alex understood. Vietnam would never be his in the way home used to be. But it had given him something rarer, the freedom to become someone new, someone unguarded, someone alive in the chaos. He once said to a friend, "Vietnam doesn't teach you how to live. It teaches you how to feel life happening." And in a world addicted to order and certainty, that kind of lesson is worth everything. So, when people ask him now, what's it really like living in Vietnam? He smiles, not because he has a perfect answer, but because the question misses the point. Living here isn't something you describe. It's something you absorb. It's the smell of fish sauce and incense at 7 a.m. It's the echo of karaoke through paper-thin walls. It's a stranger asking if you've eaten and meaning it as love. It's belonging to no place and finally realizing that's the point. And if that idea stirs something in you, if you're tired of curated happiness and ready for something real, then maybe, just maybe, Vietnam isn't a destination. Maybe it's your next beginning.